Hello everybody and welcome to the YouTube character profile upload of Fred Elliott. I say Fred Elliott.
Oh, my eardrums say shh.
Sorry. This was originally recorded for episode 13 of the podcast. long ago, back in 2012.
Before we were an award-winning, what's it called? Guinness World Book of Records winning.
We haven't
podcast.
done it. We haven't won anything.
Yeah.
It was a jolly long. Before we got a decent microphone, I can confirm that at least. So I've just kind of thought we would better put an intro into this, just to apologise for the sound quality of what you're about to listen to, and also the brevity of it. Fred Elliott.
Some might say it was before we'd even watched any episodes of Coronation Street, but that's not true.
Fred Elliott is such a beloved, important character to the show. The fact that his character profile is over in about 15 minutes or so, we really haven't done him justice, and we do pledge to revisit him at some point.
We hereby do solemnly swear
later this year or next year or something, to give a proper, thorough account of his time on the street. But for now, we thought we'd upload this one anyway.
It's handy if you've got
if you haven't got much time to spare, it's great.
15 minutes, I need to know everything there is to know. Well, we got your back. Here you go.
I'm not going to say everything. Here it is. Okay, so it's our classic character profile this week. We've had quite a few positive comments on Facebook at the moment, and it's sort of supporting Fred Elliott. Some people have been saying they like him as their favourite character. He's really definitely a favourite of mine, and I guess his link to what's been happening recently is he's one of our sort of favourite Corrie barmen or landlords. Mm-hmm. So there's the tenuous link to what's been happening. But so we're going to do a profile of Fred, who was of course played by the excellent John Savidant. So Fred's full name is Frederick Handel Elliott, named after the composer, of course.
Not the thing you used to open doors with.
No. He was born on the 27th of October 1938 and sadly died on the 9th of October 2006. He had 3 wives over his life. Sybil was his first wife that he married in 1959. Skip forward to 1997, he married Maureen Holdsworth, and that was very short-lived, as was his marriage to Eve Sykes in 2001, which we'll talk a bit more about later. He had only one child, Ashley, who was born in 1976. Fred first appeared on the 26th of August 1994, and he last appeared on the 11th of October 2006. So that was the episode after he died. They had him in an open coffin. Or maybe they just couldn't close the coffin lid on him.
He's been in over 1,000 episodes.
Yeah, 1,061 episodes he was in, which is quite good. When we decided to go for Fred as a character profile, we thought there's bound to be loads of information about him online because he's such a big character in the show, such a favourite. But there's actually very little I found about his storylines. What's he remembered for? I think lots of people would say his catchphrases, repeating himself.
Yeah.
I say repeating himself. And I remember him saying in an interview that was based on... Yeah, John Savidant said that was based on a neighbour from his childhood who used to say, get off my lawn. I say, get off my lawn, when he used to go scampering about in the next door. He also says that he based other mannerisms on people he knew. I also remember him, another catchphrase, I guess, was that whenever he went into the Rovers, his favourite tipple was Scotcham threat. Any ideas what that is? Because I've looked it up.
I don't think it is anything. I think it just means a threat of soda.
Almost. The threat is a little bit of water, so it's sort of slightly watery Scotch. I don't know.
You asked.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, so
Scotch
it's not.
and water, I think.
Oh, okay. It's not like Scotch on the rocks and you leave the ice cubes to melt.
Scotch on the rocks, but hold the ice.
He was, as a character, he was always obviously very loud, but lacking subtlety, I would say. He used another sort of phrase that I remember him for. It was like he'd find like a baby and say, "Hello, little baby," sort of put right in its face and set the baby off crying. He did it with a budgerigar or something. I think it was maybe Mavis's budgie. He was
not
like,
the same. We know that a budgie is not the same as a baby. Just in case you're right. Yeah, carry on.
Like, "Hello, little birdie," and Mavis like, "Oh, don't you scare him." What else does he? What else comes to mind when you think of Fred?
He was a bit of a serial proposer.
Yeah, he was. Who did he propose to?
Rita, Maureen, Eve, Audrey, Orchid, Doreen, Penny.
The list goes on. That isn't from Gemma's memory, by the way. We've got it written down.
It is? No, don't tell everyone.
Yeah, that kind of became a running joke, especially towards the end, that he'd propose to somebody, they'd turn him down mostly, and then he'd be like, "Oh, he's sort of so apologetic," and you sort of really feel for him because
he's a man with too much love to give.
He is. He was this sort of big, imposing man who could like
intimidate people.
Yeah, but then he was so soft and loving and
warm. Did you love him?
He was lovely, Fred.
And he also called people by their full names.
He did, a bit like Jim McDonald. So like he'd call Bev Beverly, and Bet Elizabeth, and Dev he'd call by his full name as well, Devendra. Which is, I don't know, it's just a weird thing to do.
I call everyone by their full names.
Do you? You call me Michael, don't you? Other people call me Mike sometimes.
I never call you Mike.
No. So let's go through some of his storylines. Like I said, we couldn't find very much about him. He first appeared not as a main character, he was just kind of in it as a guest role, I guess, in 1994. He appeared at a black pudding contest, which is quite suitable for the character.
It was to do with France, wasn't it? Because they love black pudding in France.
They do. Do they?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
They have the Knights of the Boudin Noir.
So what is black pudding for anyone that doesn't know?
Black pudding is a sausage made of pig's blood.
Nice. And
in France it's like a big thing that they have these Knights of the black pudding.
Oh.
Yeah, they find it's quite a delicacy there.
Well, they were having
a competition.
Yeah, they had Weatherfield had their twin town, and so they sent a delegation over there to have this black pudding contest. And Fred, being Fred, nearly caused a diplomatic incident when he tried to bribe a judge.
To be honest, that's the only way of winning a black pudding competition with French people, because I don't think that they would let an English black pudding win.
No offence to our French Canadian listeners, but I don't think the French.
No, the French. I'm just saying the French are extremely proud of their. Black pudding.
So as was Fred, and he couldn't understand at all how French sausage could be better than a bit of British sausage.
They're very different.
Yeah. In 1995 is when he started becoming more of a regular character. We saw his shop in Victoria Street, and his assistant was his nephew.
His nephew,
Ashley.
You say?
Right back at the beginning, Ashley was
supposedly the nephew.
Yeah, and not the son, because that came into it a bit later. In 1997, he bought number 4 Coronation Street for him and his new wife, Maureen. That didn't last very long. This is before you were watching it, but I remember that they had the wedding, and then within a week, I think, she'd run off with Bill Webster to Germany. Poor old Fred, more heartbreak.
Yeah, so Ashley and Maxine moved in.
Yeah, and I think Nick and Leanne were living with them at the time as well.
They do get their money's worth for the rent over in Coronation Street. They pile about as many families into each house as they possibly can.
Yeah. In 1999, Fred accidentally let slip to Audrey that Ashley was actually his son.
After he had an affair with a shop worker called Catherine Gutteridge.
Gutteridge, that's good.
So why is he called Ashley Peacock then?
Because, Kathleen Gutteridge wouldn't marry Fred because she thought she was too young. She wanted to see the world, so she left Ashley with Fred's sister Beryl, who was Beryl Peacock.
So Beryl married another man. Beryl was Elliott. Beryl Elliott.
Yeah, she married Peacock, and then Ashley grew up being Ashley Peacock, and that was quite sort of intense moments when Ashley really found out that Uncle Fred was actually his dad. In 2000, he bought into the Rovers with Mike and Dougie Ferguson. Next year, he married Eve Sykes, that was Linda Sykes' mum. Do you remember her? She was Linda Sykes was the one who also married Mike, but had been secretly having it off with his son Mark.
What a harlot!
I know, but Eve was not whiter than white either, because it turns out that she was a bigamist. She was already married to someone else. So yet again, that
too much love to give.
Ended in heartbreak for Fred.
Yeah. So 2002, he became sole landlord of the Rovers.
Yeah.
And in 2004, he ordered a Thai bride.
Yeah, he was so desperate to get married.
That just sounds really like the worst idea for a storyline. It's too many opportunities for that to just.
I'm sure there are a few racial stereotypes that were
I don't even want
in
to
that storyline.
contemplate.
But it turned out that Orchid wasn't actually Thai anyway. She was a con artist from Manchester called Stacey.
So it's okay then.
Yeah, it's okay to make fun of the.
It's just then you can just say it was Stacey being misinformed about Thai people rather than Coronation Street not knowing.
Yeah. In 2006, he'd been growing closer and closer to Bev Unwin, and then he proposed to her, and I remember that it was really lovely. There'd been so many proposals.
That's Shelley's mum, isn't it?
Yeah, there'd been so many proposals that had been turned down, and
it was kind of a shock.
Yeah, it was something like she'd broken down on the motorway, and he had to go and rescue her, and it was kind of raining, and then he said, "Oh, Bev, I love you. Will you marry me?" And she said yes, and then just the sort of his face lit up, and they sort of had this big old hug, and the camera spiraled above them. It was lovely.
That Bev is glad that she didn't have the AA or the RAC, although it didn't end well.
No, because in the end, on the day of their wedding, Audrey said to Fred that, "Oh, I do love you, actually."
She just wants what she can't have.
Yeah, because she turned him down a few years previously when they went on a trip to France. I think maybe she accepted, but then changed her mind afterwards. But yeah, then on Fred and Bev's wedding day, he went round to see Audrey and say, "No, it's too late now. I'm marrying Bev." Walks out of the room, big crash, and he's dead on the floor, heart attack. And I just remember his face there, his eyes wide open, and
oh god,
it was tragic. It was really sad.
Yep. Well, the actor wanted to leave because he couldn't cope with the 5-episode schedule.
Yeah, even though he didn't have lots of storylines, it appears he was kind of a linchpin of the show.
Was always there.
Yeah, especially once he was the landlord of the Rovers. He was always in the background, kind of having a bit of a gossip with the other characters, kind of cigarette half hanging out of his mouth, and kind of nosing in on everyone's business. But John Saverdon didn't want a big fuss made out of his exit, and it wasn't really a big fuss. But obviously, he was such
a loved character.
He was such a
had
popular
to give
character.
Him a good send-off.
Yeah, and everyone was sad to see him go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought Fred was brilliant. Definitely for me, his death stands out as a major storyline for him.
It's your favourite moment.
And then all the stuff with Ashley of being revealed to be his son was quite memorable as well. What about you?
I mean, I don't have very many vivid memories of Fred. You were mentioning about the square dealing thing.
Oh yeah, we haven't even mentioned the square dealers. That was the kind of the secret
brethren of businessmen.
Yeah,
in Rutherfield.
Yeah, and that Fred was quite high up in that, I think, and that was he always used to. I remember he used to go to try and get sort of cheap deals from people. He'd like go up to them and say, "Do you deal squarely?" to try and see if that's kind of their secret introduction to each other. That was quite funny. I remember as well, something else we haven't said was about there was a storyline about him trying to get Ashley boxing. That wasn't too long before he died, was it?
Well, he had it was him and Ashley versus another butcher and his son.
Yeah.
And they just looked like each other.
But yeah, this other bald butcher guy and his son who had a stupid voice like Ashley.
Yeah, a little squeaky voice.
And then in the end, they had the boxing match, and basically everyone in the audience started fighting with each other. I can't remember what caused it, and then and Ashley and this other guy ended up just shaking on it. It was quite funny. I mean, it's not a Fred memory for me, but a John Saverdon memory for me is I remember there's a film Loch Ness. Have you seen that?
No.
It must have come out in 99, 2000 or so, and John Saverdon wasn't a main character in that, but basically this guy who thought he had proof of the Loch Ness Monster's existence was going to reveal it to the world, and then he didn't. And John Saverdon's character, he had John's normal accent, which is very, very different to Fred's accent. He's got very posh upper class accent. He was like said, "Well, we're waiting," and my dad and me, who were watching it at the time, both at the same time, were like, "I say I'm waiting." We kind of fell about laughing. So that's a Fred memory for me, even though it's off the street.
I think it helps to have a catchphrase. If you want to be a beloved character in Coronation Street, you need a catchphrase. Really.
You've got to have a catchphrase. I said on Facebook we were going to have Fred as our character profile, and we've had a few comments. Do you want to read those out?
Yeah, Karen Knox loved everything about Fred. Loved what I think may have been his first major storyline when he finally admitted to Ashley that he was his father. I thought their relationship was wonderful. Great comic timing with the actor and character. Never put a foot wrong, in my opinion.
No.
Oh, but I do go on. I say I do go on.
She also said earlier in the week that she named her son Elliott after Fred.
Awesome.
That is dedication to the street. I did do a bit of research about other alternatives if any listeners want to name their sons after Coronation Street characters.
Yep.
Robert, after Audrey Roberts, of
Yep.
course.
Yep.
Connor,
Yep.
after Carla, or maybe name Taylor. That's the first name, isn't it? I
Taylor
think.
after who?
Mary Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
Like Taylor from Hanson.
Or just Audrey.
You can give
Mary.
them the first name as well, but if you're going for a surname,
If
then
you
there's
wanna-
a couple of options for you.
Yeah. Maybe we should have some kids.
Yeah, and Anne has also said on Facebook, I love how he repeated himself too. And Tracy Langsky has said, I agree with Karen about the father-son storyline, so that's obviously a big one for lots of people.
Yeah, that was a nice storyline.
Yeah, so if anyone else has got any favourite Fred moments, just so you can tweet us or go onto our Facebook page and find that comment and add your own thoughts.
Yeah.